it's okay. Cool. Awesome. Um, Great. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the launch of the 2025 um, Collective Impact Coalition Ethical AI report titled Plugging the AI Transparency Gap. My name is Nicholas Sewe, the engagement lead for digital transformation at the World Benchmarking Alliance, and I will be the facilitator for today's session. We're excited to have with us investors, civil society leaders, corporate representatives, policymakers, and digital rights advocates, all of whom play a vital role in shaping how AI is developed and serves the society. As we all know, AI continues to evolve extraordinarily. Its influence now touches every part of the global digital economy, from healthcare to finance, education, security, and public services. And alongside enormous opportunities, we are also seeing the intensification of long-standing challenges, including biases, discrimination, privacy risks, workforce disruption, and a growing need for clear accountability. One of the most significant gaps we face is transparency about how AI systems are built, governed, tested, and deployed, and how companies operationalize the ethical AI principles they have committed to. Without transparency, it becomes incredibly difficult for stakeholders across the ecosystem to assess risks, support responsible innovation, and protect human rights. That's why today's report launch is so important. The Collective Impact Coalition for Ethical AI, now 78 members strong, including 64 institutional investors representing over 11 trillion US dollars in assets under management, has spent the last 3 years working to drive meaningful change in corporate AI governance. This progress report reflects this journey. It highlights where companies are leading, where gaps persist, and what is required to ensure real, verifiable, and accountable progress. Today, we'll walk you through the report's key findings, hear perspectives from leaders across the investment, corporate sectors, and explore practical strategies to close the implementation gaps in ethical AI. We hope this conversation inspires continued collaboration and bold action. For the run of show, I will have opening remarks from Chris Juggins, who is the Senior Director of Programs and Policy at Media Network. Thank you so much, Chris, for making time to be with us today. This will be followed by a presentation on the report findings by members of the KIC steering committee who will introduce later, as well as a panel discussion with 3 brilliant speakers. And finally, we'll also have a call to action on ethical AI. A bit of housekeeping rules. Please keep your microphones muted unless you are invited to speak. We welcome you to share your thoughts, comments, and questions in the chat. And also, please note that this event is being recorded and will be shared on social media. It's now my pleasure to invite Chris Juggins, the Senior Director of Programs and Policy at Media Networks, to deliver his opening remarks. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Nicholas, and good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Juggins from Media Network. We are a philanthropy and investing platform focused on responsible technology. We're really proud to be a partner and supporter of the WBA Ethical AI Collective Impact Coalition, and it's an honor to kick off this progress update for what I think and what some recent investor awards have recognized as one of the most important investor engagement initiatives in the market today. We firmly believe that AI is the next critical frontier in corporate governance and investment stewardship, and that the investors and civil society organizations involved in this coalition are at the leading edge of this work. So look, Nicholas teed some of this up. This coalition's work is vital because AI is one of the most powerful forces reshaping capital markets. You all know many of these stats, but it bears repeating that consider the scale. The 4 largest tech companies in AI alone will invest $325 billion in AI infrastructure this year. Investment in AI infrastructure now exceeds the peak levels of the Manhattan Project, the Apollo program, the dot-com boom as a proportion of the economy. ChatGPT is the fastest spreading consumer technology in consumer history, and 78% of organizations now use AI in at least one business function. The real world impacts of AI are becoming material too. Data centers now already consume 4% of US electricity, growing to 8 to in the next few years, and already driving up consumer energy prices. The job impacts are early to discern, but entry-level job postings have declined in the US 35% since 2023, disproportionately on early career workers in AI-exposed sectors. It's a potential canary in the coal mine on job impacts. And the technology proceeds apace. Frontier model capabilities are continuing to double every 7 months in the duration of complexity and tasks they can take on, and are exceeding human benchmarks on a growing number of discrete tests. So it suggests that disruptions are here and immediate and are only going to continue to grow. Um, and so, what does this mean for investors and the landscape of opportunities and risks that are so vast? We think that when you have rapid technological change, profound uncertainty, and the potential for massive impacts on both corporate performance and society, that strong governance becomes absolutely critical. That strong governance is the core. Investors can't possibly become an expert in every AI application or prepare for every eventuality and every scenario, but they can meaningfully strengthen corporate governance of AI risks and opportunities. We need boards with the right expertise asking the right questions. We need meaningful, comparable disclosure. We need companies implementing governance frameworks that match the scale of the technology that's being deployed. But as you all know, most investors aren't and companies aren't where they need to be on AI governance. There's some bright spots. Today's progress reports highlight some individual companies that are demonstrating leadership, but the vast majority are still in earlier stages. And this governance gap poses real strategic, operational, and regulatory risks for investors. This is financially material. Companies that fail to have robust governance today will face challenges tomorrow in a really dynamic and competitive market. And that's why we think this coalition's work is vital in making a difference. The growth in company engagement and disclosure since 2022 demonstrates the coalition's effectiveness in shaping corporate behavior and norms. And it's been underpinned by a strong core methodology, a data-driven approach to engagement, focusing on constructive dialogue with companies, aligning engagement with existing frameworks in areas like human rights, and really tailoring the engagement to different industry, subsector, and business model contexts. But the gap between principle and practice persists. Too few companies are actually embedding ethical AI principles deeply into their governance structures, employee training, product development processes. And that's the core challenge looking ahead, and I think we'll get to in today's discussion. Implementation, deepening engagement, not just to ask if you have policies, but how those are being operationalized. Are governance structures really functioning or just checking boxes? How do we verify meaningful progress and seizing opportunities and managing risks? So, to wrap up and move on with today's great program, AI is going to continue to reshape our economy. The question is whether it happens responsibly, sustainably, accountably. And this coalition is helping to answer that question. I see this group's collective work as part of a much bigger project, which is how do we establish what good governance looks like in the age of AI? And with that, I'm excited to hear more about today's progress report. And I thank everybody in this group for your leadership on this important work. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chris, for setting the scene for the next discussions and by providing very important remarks, of course, stressing on the urgency of addressing AI risks through coordinated efforts by stakeholders, deepening engagement and strengthening corporate governance on AI. Thank you so much. I'll now invite a presentation by Jan Rizak. Jan is the Digital Transformation Lead at WBA. Benjamin Chekrun, the Engagement Lead. Kenjam, who is also a co-lead in the KIC. Lauren Compere, the Managing Director and Head of Stewardship Engagement, Boston Common Asset Management, also a founding co-lead of the coalition. And Luda Sistunova, the Head of Social Research, ESG Research, Engagement and Voting. Amundi, also a co-lead of the coalition. Over to you, Jan, with the presentation.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. And thank you again to everyone tuning in today, celebrating Human Rights Day together with us as well. And once again, special gratitude to Chris and to Media Network for supporting the growth of our coalition for so long now. I want to set the scene a little bit here, especially for those who are new to this initiative, and at the risk of reiterating some of what Nicholas said at the start, just want to highlight the sort of introductory matter for the kick. So the kick is a multi-stakeholder coalition that aims to bring more transparency and accountability to AI policies, and specifically on the AI policies of the world's largest technology companies, mostly by means of dialogue with those companies. Of course, it's one of many tools in the toolbox, but it stands out because it is coordinated. It is focused on one overarching topic, which happens to be a very topic that is very in vogue. It has a strong investor member base, and it covers a broad range of companies, not just the usual suspects, so to speak. As Nicholas mentioned, the investor group comprises 64 investors currently, with over 11 trillion US dollars in assets. And investors under the kick attempt to engage with individual companies, asking for transparency from all companies, cross-cutting transparency, in five overarching areas. That is publishing AI principles, embedding respect for human rights in those principles, explaining their governance and oversight structures in relation to their approach to AI, providing evidence of implementation, as Chris was explaining and giving some examples, and sort of displaying human rights impact assessment processes and how they apply to the development and use and procurement of AI products, or to the company's overall role in the AI value chain. So these expectations are linked to WBA's own assessment criteria on ethical AI, and they also co-evolve with them. The KIC as a coalition was formed in 2022 with a focus on the disclosure of ethical AI principles as a kind of gateway expectation that should anchor companies' overall approach to AI. This was a necessity at the time because in 2021, WBA found that only 33 out of 150 major tech companies communicated those principles to the public. Since then, the scope of the coalition has grown to the areas that you see here today. Now, in the last 3 years, to move on to our findings, 52 out of the 76 technology companies that investors try to engage with under the KIC have engaged with investors about their AI policies, even if I should say that the quality of engagement is on a spectrum, right? So this figure is only a binary, and the report goes much deeper into the sort of ups and downs and some of the recurring challenges of that engagement. And that is one of the special things I would say about this report, because for the first time we decided to explicitly identify the companies that did or did not respond. After 3 years, we think it's an important sort of step towards normalizing this kind of dialogue, and also to informing the strategies of others who seek to, spark some kind of dialogue with these firms. Of course, since these conversations happen under the umbrella of confidentiality, we do not go into the details of who said what. But I think the binary itself can help sort of support some strategies among other allies who seek to sort of engage with these companies. We also found, as we did before, that the KIC has contributed to a surge of disclosures of AI principles among companies. So between 2022, when we launched, and 2024 alone, WBA recorded an increase from 44 companies with AI principles to 71 out of the 200 companies that we cover with our work on ethical AI. And we'll be sharing a new round of data in January, so please stay tuned and look out for that. We also found that sparking dialogue between investors and the largest companies, especially the US hyperscalers, remains one of the greatest challenges for investors. This is not exclusive to the KIC, and I think we will get into this during the panel discussion, but it is key to identifying sort of patterns and shared struggles in terms of reaching companies and sort of influencing them to sort of produce more transparency, because they do send a strong signal to the rest of the ecosystem. We also registered the need to adopt industry-specific strategies, both to reach companies in different corners of the tech ecosystem and to clarify the standards that should apply to those companies. As part of this review of data, we detected large gaps in both the transparency and engagement of companies outside the quote unquote core tech industries. So we're talking retail giants, delivery companies, real estate. Companies in those industries are exhibiting, generally speaking, they're exhibiting less transparency and less maturity in terms of engagement, although there are some promising exceptions. You'll see that some companies welcome dialogue, while others persistently claim that transparency on ethical AI is not relevant or not material to their business. And then finally, we noted that the channel of engagement matters. The companies that do engage, as you can see here in this visual, tend to engage with both the KIC and WBA's digital inclusion benchmark. I should clarify that with the KIC, the purpose was to establish private dialogue, whereas for WBA, our goal is to get companies' feedback on the initial results of our research on their transparency. So it's not exactly apples to apples, but there are some similarities. And we are also disclosing this information because we believe that this can have a positive and motivating influence for, again, the collective engagement and for individual engagement to try to detect patterns in which companies engage willingly with whom. I think I will stop there and pass it on to Luda to take a deeper dive into some of the semiconductor and hardware companies that we covered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan. So we engage with the entire value chain of AI, which is quite unique about this collaboration. So semiconductors are actually a fairly large group in terms of engagement numbers. And one might wonder why engage semiconductor companies on AI ethics and ethical AI principles, other than looking, for instance, at climate or their downstream responsibilities. Well, what we've learned through engaging with semiconductor and hardware companies is that many of them are also deployers of AI, and many are considering their own AI responsibilities as a multi-dimensional kind of aspect of business ethics and governance. So we've seen a number of actors, such as NVIDIA and Qualcomm, for instance, introducing sets of fairly sophisticated principles around their AI ethics and governance. And Intel was another interesting example, as they very explicitly tie their ethical AI principles to their human rights commitments, demonstrating some very strong practices here. At the same time, we see that some companies are still looking for the best way for them to define the scope of their responsibilities when it comes to ethical AI principles. So, for example, companies like ASML, whilst they might have worked on principles for internal AI deployment, so in effect, you can think about them as any other company who will use AI for internal operations. They might be struggling in thinking about what constitutes their responsibility as a manufacturer of semiconductor equipment. And our collaboration with some of these companies has led us to think that potentially there's an opportunity to work with industry groups such as SEMI or other industry initiatives to more precisely define what it is that some of these companies might espouse as their ethical AI principles. For instance, by focusing on downstream due diligence, customer and partner expectations. And yet another group of companies is quite interesting in that they have explicitly declared that they do not use AI extensively, nor do they see themselves as actively exposed to ethical AI risks. For instance, Broadcom, who have published the statement to that effect in their ESG disclosures. So we see a lot of divergence across these companies, but I guess I'll close by saying that even though 4 of them were unresponsive, we had quite a few responsive names, and many of these companies are trying to better understand the expectations for their particular business model. Thank you.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. Can you hear me correctly? Okay, thank you very much. Hi. Okay, so on to telecom operators and how they look, how they responded. So we've got similar number of responded as the previous groups, and 4 unresponsive, so quite quite a decent result in terms of responsiveness of these companies. And if we drill down and look at their kind of like performance in terms of their management of AI risks on policies, they do great. All of them, all the companies in the benchmark have some form of AI, policy or principles, and they have had for a while. So you'd think that this would be, a very good sign for that industry. The problem is when you drill further down, things become more complicated in terms of governance. There are some decent things. We are seeing some AI committees, some AI and data committees, and some we are seeing some expertise that is there, but it's really tough to see what these committees are actually doing and how they're implementing those principles. So if we look then into processes, first thing, there's very little transparency out there. But that's similar to many to many other industries. And when through our engagements, like we have asked the questions, so how are you doing things? We have come across a few good examples of maybe one company that was doing some bias testing, another company that was doing some red teaming. There was 3 examples of AI impact assessment, but that was kind of it in terms of like some very good practices. So there's a big range of performance that we're seeing, but overall probably quite weak in terms of in terms of operationalizing responsible AI or ethical AI into the business. Then how is the industry using AI? A lot, mainly 2 things, okay? To optimize, so internally optimize the networks, do things like predictive maintenance. These are kind of low risks in terms of like I guess human rights or users. Then it's extensively being used for customer service, and there we're seeing a lot of KPIs, how more efficient those bots are at like addressing issues that customers might have, or it's making customer operators a lot more efficient in their responses. Bit of fraud detection, but generally it's making those businesses more effective, more efficient. There are some high-risk cases, especially around use of data, privacy, and then things like targeted advertising. That could be where there's a lot of risk. So we are expecting, we are pushing companies to say, how are you using user data? What are you doing to protect this? So that's something that's seen as high risk, and we are thinking about it using the EU AI Act and their categories of risks. And also anything to do with infrastructure and powering and connecting the smart city, smart grids. Anything to do with infrastructure is then seen as high risk. So this is something we've got to keep in mind in our dialogues with those companies. Looking forward, I think it's a real key moment for the telecom industry. They have been massively lagging, if you think about it, in terms of financial performance. They've not managed to grow their businesses as with the number of, if you think of like the amount of data that they're channeling, they've not managed to capture any of the growth of like the other, the other platforms, for example, over the past, I guess, 20 years, and they've really been lagging. So I think all of them see this as a time where they can transform themselves to be, crucial in the AI infrastructure, in the AI connectivity, and not just be the kind of the dumb pipes, but turn themselves into more of like, tech platforms. So we'll be really looking at how they can do this in a responsible way. I'll stop there and I'll pass it on to Lauren on
Great.
the platforms.
Thanks, Benjamin. So this is the group where apparently we didn't have as much progress. So 10 software companies were responsive, 7 weren't. So it's almost even. I think what's really important to highlight here, though, is that some of the major platform companies didn't engage by region, and it wouldn't be surprised, and it's in the report, that the US hyperscalers have been some of the most difficult to bring to the table. I think what's really important here, though, is that this is one of the most influential group of companies, both from a practice perspective as well as the need to engage, given their place in the AI value chain. Sometimes these companies are the foundation model developers for AI models. And so when we went and started to assess and engage this particular group of companies, we were really looking at where are they in the ecosystem? What do they do? Are they a foundational model? Are they a developer, a deployer, a user? And in many cases, they can be all three. I would say that when we were able to get to the table to have dialogue, we were really focusing on implementation. Most of these companies, if not all, have AI principles of some sort. And so we were really honing in on AI implementation. And one of the things that I think is really important, and I'll call out one company, Alphabet, is that when we're looking at AI risk management, we really want sort of the application of a standard framework. And so NIST, which is a standards organization for technology, has a framework that Alphabet, for example, is using, which really focuses on the governance, the mapping, the measuring, and the managing the AI risk. And this is something that we're really calling on all of these companies to do across the life cycle and also continuously. In terms of other active dialogues that we were really able to dig into some, Microsoft in particular, we were able to engage more on AI implementation, sensitive use cases, and really looking at how they were assessing human rights through their due diligence and impact assessments. And this is a big gap for this group in terms of formal human HRDD and human rights impact assessment, and an area that investors need to continue to engage. I think finally, while some of the companies didn't come to the table to engage either the WBA or investors, they do have some of the better practices when it comes to AI governance, AI implementation, and disclosure. And so we do feel it's important to look at those practices and to use them as peer comparisons. But I think, again, if there was one big message I would have for this group, because of their influence and their role and their global reach, and their ability to define and change the ecosystem, these companies really should be coming to the table to engage investors, given many of these are in the highest risk categories. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Lauren. I think I'll take it from here. We did note some good practices. Of course, Lauren has touched on some, but these are some of the companies that engaged with investors that had good notable practices. Next slide, please. So to start with the Spark New Zealand and quite a similar approach with Telstra as well. So I'll just combine the two. Both of them training extensively most of their staff on ethical AI, and specifically for Telstra, external consultation with governments and internal legal teams on issues that may arise as a result of AI systems development and implementation. So that's a notable practice that we saw. The second one from SAP, their AI principles are in line with UNESCO's recommendations, but most importantly, emphasizing on human rights and prevention of harm. And also the company's global AI ethics policy applies to all AI systems developed and deployed, including partner and third-party models with no major exceptions. And also importantly to note was that there's a strict prohibition and flagging of early risks in the assessment process. Next slide. The other one is Nokia, which has a strong innovation culture, which supports or encourages knowledge sharing across the entire organization and testing of new ideas. A very strong human rights due diligence process, which is multi-layered screening of all AI use cases, and also a dedicated human rights expert in case a risk is flagged to take on the highlighted potential risks. Also similar to the other first two companies, there is continuous company-wide training on business ethics, including a dedicated module on ethical AI. Lauren touched on Alphabet, so I'll not repeat that. And also we noted a good practice from Microsoft in terms of how they approach their human rights impact assessment. Yeah, that's it for the good practices. Thank you so much for that presentation, Ben, Luda, and Jan. We now move quickly to the next part of this event, which is a panel discussion. It's now my pleasure to introduce the three panelists. We have Vikram Nagrenda, the Director, Corporate Sustainability at SAP. We have Julia Shatikova, the Ownership Lead Business Partner at Saracen and Partners. And then we also have Anita Doret, who is the Director, Investor Alliance for Human Rights. Thank you all for making time to be with us and to lead discussions on this important topic. I'll start with you, Vikram. Being one of the most influential tech companies, how are you practically ensuring a balanced stakeholder engagement in research and development of AI systems and ethical implementation of your AI principles across your different business lines? If you could respond in 4 minutes or less, that would be great. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas, for the invitation today. Congratulations on the publication of the report summarizing CSC and WPA's effort over the last years. Your continued focus on ethical AI is a strong signal for companies like us to improve year over year. Congratulations also on your recent awards. I think it shows that we are all on an important journey to ensure that the AI is safe, it's ethical, and then it respects human rights over the next years. When it comes to SAP, I would like to mention a few things. First and foremost, we have the support and commitment from our executive board for the ethical development and deployment of AI. Ensuring and retaining support from the top is crucial in the long run. And we are fortunate to have that. Secondly, we want everyone in the company to understand and ensure that the AI that they are developing or deploying is ethical, because that's the right way to do and the only way to do. We don't want this to be treated as another compliance exercise. And we have training and education programs. We offer a number of engagement platforms for our employees. We have speaker series and so on to instill this mindset in everyone. And thirdly, we engage with our social partners in relevant countries and work with them to ensure that ethics is an important consideration when deploying AI for our own use, right? So with these three aspects, we can execute on the framework and the processes that we have established. Maybe some of them I can quickly go over. Nicholas already shared that on one of the slides. We have established a global AI ethics policy, which is based on frameworks like the UNESCO recommendations, OECD guidelines, NIST risk management framework that applies to all AI work, regardless of AI systems we are developing or the ones that we are deploying, the ones that our partners and ecosystems are developing and selling. That's our foundation. And we have a governance structure and impact assessment process that ensures that all AI work is assessed against the requirements of the policy, the risks are understood, and the risks are mitigated. We have assessed over 1,500 use cases over the last 3 years and ensure that they comply with the latest version of the policy. And of course, this comes with challenges. One of them, as you rightly asked, Nicholas, how do we balance the speed of innovation with ensuring compliance with the policy? And first and foremost, our impact assessment process classifies the use cases as standard use cases or high-risk use cases. Standard cases are automatically approved and they move forward. They are on a fast lane, so to say. We do some spot checks, but more or less they just go through very quickly. Critical risk use cases, they require a longer approval process. And even within the high risk, we do a second round of discussion to see if they are controlled in nature or they are critical. Usually controlled high risk use cases also go through. So in a sense, we have created different lanes with different speeds, depending on the risk exposure and how well the risks are mitigated. We are continuously building tools, automations, in order to speed up R&D, at the same time ensure that the R&D and the innovations are ethical in nature. Right? So these are some of the examples in which we manage the balance between ensuring that we continuously ship innovations, we ride the AI wave, but we do so in a responsible manner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vikram. That's very insightful. I'll move to the next panelist, Julia Shetkova, the ownership lead business partner at Saracen and Partners. Julia, we've seen a mix of company responses and feedback has also been, shared by the previous presenters when it comes to investor queries on ethical AI. From your experience, what are the next practical steps in addressing challenges around AI governance, disclosures, and as well as implementation of AI principles?
Thank you, Nicholas. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
So let me answer this question first with stating the obvious. We are investors. So on the kick, we're all investors. And our goal is, of course, to help the real world, but also avoid a bubble. And the current AI CapEx is the largest investment we have ever made in anything. Valuations already assume a level of AI capability and ability to monetize that is not yet proven. So the risk is not only whether companies can fund the build out with their money, energy, and talent, but the bigger risk here is whether competitive pressure leads them to prioritize speed over quality and safety. And whether the inherent weaknesses of AI models, including hallucinations and low reliability, will make deployment dangerous or uneconomic. So in that sense, according to calculations, up to 15 trillion of market cap can end up being a bubble. And if that happens, the repricing could be severe. So what we want is responsible AI ecosystem to evolve at the same pace as technology. And the practical question is, How do we know whether guardrails are real, effective, and improving, or whether safety is being traded off for growth? So in our engagements, what we're trying to achieve and will be trying to achieve going forward is a structured, comparable framework for evaluating the effectiveness of governance and safety tools in each business model. Specifically, we're pushing companies to disclose not just policies, but methods, evidence, and metrics, and to show progress over time. Let me give you a few examples of our asks. Firstly, we want safeguards that balance free expression with meaningful control of harmful content. And in our reach to Alphabet and Meta, for example, we're asking how they measure the quality of content moderation across both social platforms and chatbots regarding misinformation, disinformation, bullying, emotionally manipulative content, and who is accountable for those assessments. Without defined quality metrics, companies cannot credibly claim that they are implementing their own AI policies. In particular, this is important as content moderation approaches can change, like we've seen at Meta earlier this year. So where companies do not engage substantively, even when approached through not one but several investor coalitions, like Alphabet, we're really facing those problems. We will consider escalation, and the escalation may even include implications for responsible directors, applied individually, of course, by each investor, but still, the escalation is possible here. Now, another example is that we want to prevent AI from empowering and enriching criminals, terrorists, and authoritarian regimes. Voice and video cloning tools are proliferating, and the risks range from fraud and social engineering to malware and data breaches. Our practical ask is simple. Are you applying tools to prevent misuse? Okay, you do. Then what effectiveness metrics are you using to measure their success? And please disclose beyond saying that we red teamed X number of products, but disclose the outcomes. What risk levels were identified? What mitigations you used? By how much they reduce risk? And how results trend year on year? A single product example is helpful too, but what we need is consistent, comparable reporting. Microsoft is the closest to this, but even they don't currently provide such extensive disclosure. Now, another example is agentic applications. We know that they could unlock significant value, but they also heighten risks, especially as systems gain autonomy and interact with personal information, in particular financial accounts. These technologies will never be risk-free. We know that. So the governance focus must be very practical. What data quality improvements are happening, robust data teaming applied with, again, quantifiable results, post-release monitoring and audits, incident response, grievance mechanisms, remediation, and clear year-on-year performance trends. We all need this quantitative information. To reiterate, our core ask is what evidence demonstrates that your safety framework really works and what quantitative metrics show progress. And once those metrics exist, then the engineering teams across the companies and management should be assessed and rewarded accordingly to them. Beyond those quantitative metrics, we will continue asking companies to integrate internal human rights due diligence and external independent human rights impact assessments into their AI lifecycle. And crucially, we want meaningful public disclosure in a consistent format, the scope, the methodology, the salient risks that were discovered, the key recommendations, and implementation status. What we see today is very far from this. Even when companies reference this assessments, like Amazon said they did 10 last year, but they don't disclose outcomes. Where impact assessments are conducted, there should be clear disclosure of all these things. And this is essential for investor confidence that AI principles are not just stated, but implemented. In short, the next practical steps are to move from principles to proof through comparable safety metrics and independent human rights assessments, through the life cycle of AI products across all business models. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Julia. Very practical solutions and suggestions there. And I think most importantly, clear disclosures by companies needed. I'll now move to Anita. Anita Doret is the Director, Investor Alliance for Human Rights. Anita, I think you've extensively engaged with companies even beyond, the topic of AI and across human rights issues. What are some of the challenges that are experienced by stakeholders, particularly investors and civil societies, in the broader AI ecosystem in company outreach and engagement? And what do you propose as the way forward in addressing these challenges? Anita?
Thanks so much, Nicholas, and wanted to really congratulate everybody here for the great work. I think investors really coming together for collective engagement. The depth of the knowledge of investors as they're engaging with these companies are really remarkable, and a lot of that is driven as well through the data that is provided through World Benchmarking Alliance, and yeah, so we really wanted to call that out. And we've had the privilege, the Investor Alliance for Human Rights also has an engagement with big tech as well as with telcos. We've been working with Ranking Digital Rights, which is one of WBA's benchmarks that benchmark the 26 largest global companies in the world. And we've been engaging and partnering with RDR and engaging these companies since 2019. So it's been a long time. And so I can kind of talk about some of the trends that have come out from that sort of partnership. And many of the investors on this call as well are also involved in that. So, we've really been able to take advantage of that coordination of different collective engagements as well. So I guess, the biggest challenge is non-responsiveness of companies. That's the theme that has come across this piece, and particularly with the hyperscalers in the US, big tech, etc. So I'm going to kind of focus my conversation sort of around that. Why are they not responding? It's because, of who they are, right? They're huge companies, unfettered power, really wielding power over how society operates through their platforms without sufficient regulations, and the size of the companies. So one of the things that comes out from this is really, as well as you're looking at some of these big tech companies, for example, Meta and Alphabet, and they've been named as one of the more unresponsive companies. And that also has to do with their shareholding structure. So as investors, we're trying to use our voice, right, to engage with companies. We own these companies, and each share of our ownership should really give us that voice. However, the way the shareholding structure is made is such that there are dual class share structures. So in terms of management and founders of the company, for every share that they own, they have a multiplier effect in terms of what their voting power is. So, for one share, they might have 100 votes. And so as it goes right now, with Mark Zuckerberg's holdings in Meta, he controls more than 50% of the shareholder voting power. So that already sends this message to shareholders or investors. I don't actually really need to talk to you because I control the shareholder voice of over half of that companies. So, that governance, it is a governance structure around shareholdings that is a problem within big tech. So that's one thing I'm going to call out. The second thing that I wanted to call out as well is, one of the motivators that we've been able to use with engaging companies where we've had to, as Julia talked about it, as well as a number of you, Lawrence talked about it too, we need to escalate where there is no engagement. And one of the escalation tools that shareholders have had, particularly in the US, is to file resolutions at annual general meetings of companies. And this has had a positive effect because after you file a proposal, the companies often come back to the shareholders and then have a conversation. So a lot of our conversations with companies like Alphabet, Amazon, Meta has been as a result of filing a resolution, then they come to the table. And often enough, we want to have, as well as Apple, I want to call that out. And often enough, through that dialogue, we are able to come up with some progress and compromise. And sometimes those proposals don't go to vote. So that is a really important tool. But what is happening today in the broader sort of regulatory environment is that shareholders' rights in this way to really bring their voice in an open forum to talk about issues is being silenced through regulations around how the Securities and Exchange Commission deal with shareholder voice with big tech. The third thing that I was going to call out, which is kind of the final piece here, is data, right? So, I mean, all our engagements that we've been talking about, it enables us to do really sort of more meaningful and detailed engagement because of the data that data providers like benchmark providers like WBA Ranking Digital Rights gives us. So a couple of things here I wanted to call out, and I'm going to close up shortly, Nicholas, is for example, when we started our engagement a few years ago, it was not easy to engage with the Chinese big tech companies, Tencent and Baidu, for example. But when Tencent and Baidu got kind of dinged by one of the commercial data providers in the sense that they downgraded them as a result of a failure with one of the UN Global Compact requirements, once they got downgraded and investors had to kind of take their monies out of these companies because they didn't fit into certain criteria anymore, immediately companies like Baidu and Tencent came to the table and now are having really very fruitful conversations through the AI ethics kick and as well as through the Ranking Digital Rights engagement. So that's the power that data has. And now Ranking Digital Rights has recently just launched their latest set of data for big tech. And out of that, we are engaging with, so that just came out in 2025 in April or March. And so as a result of that, we sent out letters to the 10 companies, big tech companies that we're engaging, using that brand new, that updated data, engaging with companies on that, showing the gaps. Out of the 10 outreaches we had 9 responses from those companies. So I feel the data drives that response and really empowers investors to have meaningful dialogue. So I just wanted to kind of call that out. And then I guess just the last piece, which is that the coordination that's happening between the AI ethics kick as well as the Ranking Digital Rights engagement. So I mentioned that out of the 10 companies, 1 company didn't respond, but that company responded to the AI ethics kick, and we coordinated and had a joint conversation with that company. So that then allows us to kind of increase our engagement with the companies too. So I'm hoping that sort of gives you a little bit of insights, and thanks for having me on this great discussion.
Thank you so much, Anita, for providing a lot of insights in terms of escalation strategies and the importance of data in driving dialogue with companies. Conscious of time, we only have 2 minutes. I'll quickly invite our very last speaker to give us, a call to action. Patrick Short, you are the Ethical AI Engagement Lead at Fidelity International, and has been, one of the founding members of the coalition. A quick question: how do we move on from here? Having had all these conversations around the urgency and the risks, and possible escalation measures, how do you move on from here?
Thanks, Nicholas. And I think I'll just echo what the rest of our speakers have already said. I think what the KIC's achieved over the past 3 years has been fantastic. What started out as a nascent collaborative initiative has moved into something that's fundamentally well respected and now award winning. So I think keep the focus on implementation, as Julia mentioned. What we're hearing from companies now is a lot of focus on all the initiatives they're putting in place, and we really need to keep pushing for evidence of those initiatives. So as investors, we have that certainty on the safety side of things. So I think we need to keep our focus on what works, deepening collaboration, sharing our learnings, and creating a safe space for investors, experts, and civil society to come together to, I guess, keep promoting the ethical AI agenda. So, yeah, from a Fidelity perspective, we've loved being part of this initiative for the past few years, and I'd encourage everyone to remain focused and keep up the good work. So that's what I'd say, and I'll pass back to you, Nicholas.
Thank you so much, Patrick. We are at the hour. Really appreciate all the speakers for making time to be with us and sharing their insights and thoughts on this important topic. The report is live and available on WBS website. I've also shared it in the chats. Feel free to use the data that is provided by WBA publicly, and we look forward to your continued collaboration and conversations on this important topic. Thank you once more for joining, and have yourself a lovely week ahead. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Congrats to everybody. Thank you.